Hello, one and all. Welcome to our Carlton v Collingwood preview episode. Of course, my name is Mitch Ethan, and as always, we're joined by Ethan Duffy. And of course, it's this week, the big game, Carlton v Collingwood, round 20, Friday, 28th of July, 7:50 at the MCG. Massive game. Of course, it's round 20. It's unbelievable how we've only got, I think, 5 more rounds left in the season until, of course, finals. But Duffy boy, more importantly, mate, how are you?
I'm well, mate. Obviously, a little bit of a tick-off kind of game last week against the Eagles. I'm not really sure what we were worried about pre-game with that game. I think it's just due to our, everyone's kind of PTSD and past heartbreak and past, results. But yeah, no, it's exciting, mate. Always exciting versus this mob. And I guess there's a lot riding on it for us. I guess it's, it's not, all doom and gloom if we do end up going down this weekend, but I think we can have a good crack at the Pies, who are obviously, the benchmark in the competition. And, we hate them, but obviously you got to respect the way they're going about it. And I'll tell you right now, the game might not be so important for them, but I'll tell you right now, they would not want to let this slip and let us make finals.
Yep, spot on. Of course, we missed the review episode because, of course, I was away. And we just couldn't find the time to actually get an episode out. But of course, it's great to see us kind of do our thing against I guess, quite a crappy side to be, I guess, respectful to West Coast. But one thing is a little bit of a negative was our second half. Seeing that first half was an absolute joy to watch as me being there to actually watch the game. But I think just that second half, I think we just let them back in it. And I think a big factor to that was Sam Walsh going down and also Jack Silvani. So it kind of changed our structure. But to quickly touch on last week's game against West Coast, did you get to watch it, Daffy boy?
Yeah, so I after my game, I had it on, watched it on the KO on the phone. Then I rewatched most of the game after. But yeah, I think with the second half, to be honest, I think the game was over 8 minutes in. And I think the players knew that. I think the players knew that too. I think they knew they had to get the job done. And obviously, Walshy had probably one of the best quarters I've ever seen from a Carlton player. I think he had 100 and something super coach points and only played 34% of the game. So that's pretty annoying because he's injured now. But I think the second half, we had no rotations. I think for most of the game, we only had 2 rotations. Obviously, Sauce went down, Chincotta, Walsh. I think we had no rotations by 3/4 time. So obviously, game's done. And to be honest with you, obviously we need more. Did we need more percentage? I'm not sure because we still got 70. And I think we're still above everyone else around us. So it's not really an issue. I think more now it's about, getting the 4 points. Because I think if we get enough wins on the board for the next 5 weeks or so, I think we'll end up playing finals.
Yeah, well, it was crazy to actually see the bench towards the, I think it was halfway through the fourth quarter when I think it was Motlop was out, Walsh was out, Silvani was out. It was just like seeing so many players. I was like, what's going on? But I think, now that the injuries have actually come out, we will touch on the injuries very soon. But I think Silvani and Walsh is a little bit more of an actual injury. When I think Motlop, we don't know yet, but I think that's a little bit more of a precaution, making sure that he doesn't get injured more in the game, just because you don't want to risk those sorts of players. But to very quickly just touch on the disposals that were, I guess, seen against West Coast was, of course, George Hewitt, 31 touches. Great to see him, I guess, get his chance to have that sole midfield role with a few injuries out. But, of course, he with his 31 and a goal, what a game he played. Sam Doherty, 29 touches. Newey, 23 touches. It's good to see him get a bit of the ball. Sadie as well, 22 touches. And, of course, Blake Acres, 22 touches. He just keeps on doing his thing. But to now transition into more of the preview for, of course, the upcoming game Friday night against the Pies. Daffy boy, favourite moments. There's a lot of them. I know that there's a lot of us. I know there's a lot of moments, of course, when we were a kid, but also some recent moments. What is your favourite moment against Collingwood?
Yeah, well, I feel like we haven't. Well, I think last time we saw us beat Collingwood in person was actually 2017. our last win against them was in COVID. So that's over 6 years, 7 years. So we do owe this mob, especially after last year and earlier in this year. So, but yeah, no, there's been a lot of, obviously the wins against Collingwood mean a lot. Doesn't matter where you are on the ladder or, what's going on in your life. Those wins always, get you up and about. But yeah, my favourite moment, obviously, when I was really little, obviously I was a big, Brendan Favola fan. He's probably my hero growing up, and he was probably the sole reason why I went to the footy when we were in 2000s. He was the guy that pretty much brought all Carlton fans to the ground and, kicked bags every week. But yeah, for me, I think in 2008 when he kicked 8 or 7 or 8 against the Pies.
Scotland, still Scotland. It's his own footy at the moment. One last one for Fev. Oh, this would be something. It's looking good. It's going and going. He's equalled his career best. It's been all about Fev.
It was a good. I think obviously he showed his, inner personality and, getting into their fans and, kicking goals and if you look at the last quarter, I think he kicked 4 in the last quarter and kicked a few rippers, which was, the way he kind of went about it. And he understood what the rivalry was about. I think, it's so important for this group of players to stamp their mark on this rivalry and have a big moment. And I think that can come this Friday. So obviously Fev, stamped his, authority in that game and, sent the Pies fans home after kicking 4 in the last quarter. I think it was Juddy's first Carlton Collingwood game. So it was kind of a big moment for Carlton in terms of, got all the draft picks. You got Murph, Gibbs, Cruiser, all playing in that game and beating the Pies, who were pretty decent that year too.
Yeah, I mean, I think the year after they made the prelim, or maybe it was that year. It was one of the years, and of course 2010. We know what happened with Collingwood. So, but I think my favorite moment, like I love that moment, just because of as soon as Favola starts to get on, it's very hard for the opposition team to stop. And I think right now to kind of, I guess, relate Fev to like a Charlie Curnow, I think it's a little bit too soon to kind of compare a guy like that, like Brendan Favola, an absolute legend of the club. But I think with Charlie Curnow, I think he's that guy that if he kicks 4, we are winning the game most of the time. So it's great to finally see, because even 2013, 2014, 2015, we didn't really have that genuine key forward post Brendan Favola, but now we've got two of probably the top 5 key forwards in the competition in Harry McKay and Charlie Curnow. But my favourite moment, it's a little bit more of it's a pro, but it's also a con. So, of course, Patrick Cripps, when he kicked that goal in 2019.
Langdon denied by Silvani. The Blues are giving it everything. Langdon, here comes Cunningham. Busts a move. Cripps, this is a big moment. Hold your breath. Breathe. What a goal from Patrick Cripps.
Just to see that sort of leader stand up on that day. It was very much a grand final sort of feeling, because we don't really know the feeling of a grand final. I think it was that sort of, it was kind of the written in the stars sort of moment. Paddy Cripps sort of sunny, I think it was Sunday or Saturday afternoon. And it was just that clutch kick. And it's quite a shame that we haven't seen many more moments like that from our leaders in the club. Of course, there's like those small moments, but hopefully when we start playing big games and a little bit more finals football, players like that can really stand up. And I think Paddy Cripps with that goal, I think the commentary was Cunningham, and here comes Cunningham, bust a move, Cripps, this is a big moment. But yeah, it's just unbelievable to see that sort of moment. But of course, to touch on, and also a milestone in a big game, of course, against Collingwood. But George Hewitt, 150 games. I know that the majority of those games were, of course, with Sydney. But of course, with that, we've brought him over to the Carlton Football Club. He's really performed, especially last season, but this season as well. He's been quite solid when he's gotten the chance. But Daffy Boy, 150 games for George Hewitt. How important is George Hewitt right now, especially in the side?
Oh, what a pickup he's been. I think, we picked him up as an unrestricted free agent, which is, credit to Nick Austin and the list management team getting that over the line, because obviously it was kind of under the radar, and then it kind of just happened, and we brought him over. Obviously, he thought, I needed more opportunity in the midfield. He was obviously playing a little bit more halfback at the Swans, who were a good side at the time. So, no, he's been really good, and like you said, he's going to be extremely important this weekend because his inside work is phenomenal. And I think his work rate goes unnoticed sometimes. I think, every stoppage is in there. And I think he's that kind of cool head we need in our side. I think that's what helped us, especially at the start of last year. We had a lot of young guys who hadn't really experienced winning or knowing how to win games consistently. And it shows having these guys in your team like George Stewart is crucial. And, 150 games shows the player he is, that consistent, played plenty of games of footy. And I hope he's in the next Carlton Premiership team because he's really deserving of it, and hopefully has a big one this weekend against the Maggots.
Yeah, well said. I think with George Stewart especially, he's the type of guy that you're wanting in your side every single week. It's that role player, but it's also that guy that could change a game within a heartbeat. Like he could he could do a few important have some important moments in a game that can really change the tide of the game. But yeah, credit to George. I think 150 games is quite solid, of course, as an AFL footballer. But of course, Stewart's got a lot more games in him for the rest of his career. But just to touch on our potential inclusions before we touch on our ins and outs, there's a few negatives, of course, with some injuries. So Sam Walsh, 2 to 3 weeks out with a hamstring injury, but it says 2 to 3 weeks, but we don't know how long that will actually be because, of course, it's Sam Walsh. So right now it says 2 to 3 weeks, but we all know how professional he is. So hopefully he can try and turn that into a 1 week injury, but very unlikely because you don't want to risk a guy like Sam Walsh. But right now it says 2 to 3 weeks on the Carlton website. But of course, another crucial injury, which is Jack Silvagni. He has a joint sprain to his knee, but of course the timeline is to be continued. So we don't really know exactly when he is going to return. But of course, a joint sprain to the knee, it's quite a serious injury, and you don't want to take it lightly. But of course, some potential inclusions that are, of course, some tests this week to play. Just very quickly before I transition to you, Duff, is Paddy Cripps, Adam Chera, Jesse Motlop, Jack Martin, and Corey Dern are all tests to play this week. But to transition now straight into the ins and outs, Daffy Boy, who are you bringing in and who are you bringing out?
Yeah, obviously it's a kind of frustrating time to have these injuries once again, like last year. They kind of catch up to you, and hopefully we have enough, depth in all lines of the ground. I think defensively we look pretty sound in terms of injuries, touch wood, but in our midfield we've had, ins and outs, and I think consistency in your best 22 is important. Not having too many changes every week, which we've tended to have over the last few years. And when we do play good footy, our best 22 kind of stays together. But yeah, obviously outs, Walshy, which is frustrating because the form he's in. Sauce, obviously another frustrating injury because he's been playing well as well. But I've dropped Lewis Young and Josh Honey. Obviously Lewis Young was playing up forward, which was a little bit hard to watch over the weekend, but I thought he was okay when he, pinch it in the ruck. I think he's a good ruck, and obviously he's better defensively behind the ball. So that'll be an interesting watch as well at season's end, in terms of what his role is going to be heading into next year, because it seems to be that he's on the outer in terms of the best 22, but that changes over weeks because we know that with certain players. Look at Lockie Fogarty now as a lock in the 22. We probably thought he wasn't going to be playing at the club next year. But another drop is Josh Honey. I just think for a big game like this, I just don't think we can have him playing. I'm not against it if he does play, like good on him, but I just think he'll miss this week. Ins for mine, obviously Cripps, hopefully with the test, I think he'll be playing with the cork. Chera, hopefully, fingers crossed, which is, I think he's probably 70% chance of playing, 60% chance of playing. Do we risk him? Not sure. Jack Martin coming in as well. His calf is, not the greatest, part of his body, in his career, which has kind of let him down in his career. He was a number one pick, if we all remember that. So, and also Pitternet, I think he's got to come in. I think with the two ruckmen in terms of Cox and Darcy Cameron, I think you need a bit of size in there, and you have TDK playing up forward as that rotating second ruck.
Yeah, well, spot on. I think my ins and outs are very much similar. I'll just very quickly just go through my outs. Of course, Jack Silvagni, Sam Walsh, Lewis Young, and Josh Honey. They're all out for me. I think that's the exact same as you, Duffy Boy. And of course, ins for me, Mark Pitnet, completely agree. I think it's because of Tom DeConning. He needs to play as a forward, as you just said. But I think Pitnet to kind of get his chance once again. And once again, we get to see how this combination goes. Because, of course, as we mentioned probably about a month ago, we didn't think we would see this combination again. But now that there's been some injuries, things need to change to make this work. And TDK has to try and, because if this goes well, if TDK gets on the board and Pitnet maybe around the ground is a little bit better, this might be a threat, because we both know how well they combine in a ruck sense, but it's now down to whether they can actually work together around the ground, because that's something that, as we mentioned prior, is just the ruckman position is a dying position in a way. It's not going to be a position that's going to go absolutely like a tagger. Like a tagger's coming back, but it's not like it's just going to go away completely. But it's not as important as what it once was. And that's one thing that it's just interesting to see, because we could try and bring it back in a sense, because we know how important Mark Pitnet is to our rucks, but also you need to have a ruckman that can go around the ground. And that's why a Tim English has been so effective this season. That's why Max Gawn has been great probably the past decade. So same as Brodie Grundy, which is, of course, a conversation towards season's end. But so my ends, so Cripps as well. Hopefully he plays. I think he's pretty much confirmed to play, but also he's still a test. Adam Chera, I really do hope he does play. It's going to be like kind of just a touch and go, but I think he has to play, especially for a game against Collingwood. But I do see your point about you don't want to risk him, because this is a game that we're kind of going in undermanned anyway. Is the point of just maybe not risking him, but also it's a game against Collingwood. So you don't want to fold those games either. So I do see the point, but it's just, I don't know. I think Adam Chera, if he is even 75%, this is Adam Chera. And we know how good he's been this season. But of course, Jack Martin is my last in. Hopefully he comes in. But of course, as you said, I think Jack Martin's calf is almost as reliable as my car. But your substitute, Daffy Boy, have you got a sub down there written down?
No, I usually just, obviously listen to what you say and what, we're talking about in the whole conversation in terms of inclusions. It's a tough one. But for mine, I've actually got Lewis Young now. I've turned to Lewis Young, and I think he needs to be the sub. I think he can play defensively. Obviously, he played ahead of the ball last week, and obviously in the ruck, he can do a job. So I think he'll be the man. If not, I think Ed Curnow could be, or maybe a Zach Fisher. So there's a lot of options, but I think it's looking like it's either going to be Lewis Young or Ed Curnow.
Yep. Well, I will have most likely Lewis Young, and Ed Curnow is going to play, as we spoke about. He needs to play as that tagger. He needs to play as that tagger, where it's either you have Ed Curnow as a sub or maybe Lewis Young for an extra tall depth, but you need to have Ed Curnow in. If he's going to play in the best 22, tag Dacos. Yep. That is your job this week. You go out there and tag Dacos. And we know how when Ed Curnow actually tags, he's actually quite solid. So I hope that if he does play this week, especially with the lack of mids, he goes straight to Nick Dacos. But to now transition to the ground overview, of course, we'll touch on the back line, midfield, rucks, and of course the forward line, and we'll just go through a key matchup for each line. But Daffy Boy, the back line, we're going to do it a little bit different this week. We've gone with Nick Newman up against Mr. Clutch, Jamie Elliott. So what are your thoughts on this matchup? And of course, the back line as a whole from our end, but also the forward line from their end.
Yeah, Jamie Elliott. He's I don't want to give him too much kudos, but no, he's like that game on the weekend. Jesus, man, like you just knew he was going to kick the goals when he was going to kick him. He's got that knack for in front of goal, and he's always been that natural. And I think his body's, he remained fit the last couple of years, which has been a bonus for him and Collingwood. So, and obviously he sent us home last year, packing our bags in season 2022, but. you look at the name next to him and you go, he can get this job done. Yep. He's done it on Toby Green. He's done it on other players, maybe Charlie Cameron's. He's done it on other, small forwards. And, Newey's been superb this year. I think he'll be top 5 in the BNF, in my opinion, just based on how the BNF tends to work every year. There always seems to be someone that kind of skyrockets into that top 5, more of an underrated player around the league. But internally and as a fan base, we rate him very, very highly. So, no, I think you get the job done. And like we say with Collingwood, they're so unpredictable in their forward line. You don't really know who's going to kick the bags of goals, whether it's Myercheck, Johnson, Elliott. They've got some other players who run through there, obviously. A lot of their mids kick goals as well. So that's how unpredictable they are. Obviously, they've got DeGoey in there, who's probably in career best form, unfortunately. And, but as a back six, I think, you got Weeders in there. And I think that was our downfall against them last time a little bit. I felt like, we didn't score enough, obviously, but we lost by, I think they scored 85 only. So I guess you go, that's okay defensively. But I just felt like really loose in that first kind of quarter and a half. Johnson taking, pack marks and Myercheck getting easy goals. And, geez, that was a bad day, one of the footy. So, I think we get the job. I think we can get the job done 100%. I think we have to get the job done defensively first if we want to win this game.
Yeah, well said. I think it's definitely a thing that has always been held together this season. In particular, the defensive system has been fantastic. That's one thing that we need to give to Carlton, and that's one thing that we need to give to Vossi as well, because at the start of the year, pre-season, he was speaking about we want to try and work more towards our defensive structure, and it's saying that it's been pros because we've kept teams to low scores, but also we can't score. So now we're starting to score more, and now it's just interesting to see when we come up against these good sides like Collingwood, Port, Melbourne, this is the kind of the time to test against the best in the competition. How do you go against them? And hopefully they don't score as much against us. But I completely agree. But just one question before we move on to the midfield. Jacob Wiedering, who do you think he goes to? So, of course, there's McStay, who returned last week. There's a Myercheck down there, and also a Cox and a Cameron when they kind of switch in the ruck. Who do you reckon Wiedering goes to? Yeah,
I think he has to go to the rotating ruck. I think he has to, in size-wise, especially if Lewis Young's not down there. I think Wieders will go to Cox and Cameron, depending on, who's coming up and down. And Cox always seems to get a couple of goals against us. So can he get 0 this week? Because he kind of annoys me.
well said, Daff. So, of course, now we'll move on to the midfield. Of course, the matchup this week is pretty much trying to focus on the of the Bulls, I guess, from our end and from their end. So, of course, Paddy Cripps, hopefully, if he plays up against Jordan Ngoe, as you mentioned before, Daff, he's in career best form. He's having still, I reckon, an underrated season. I think if he didn't get suspended, and if he played those games and he's played purely as a midfielder, he would almost be up there for the Brownlow. But, of course, Paddy Cripps v. Jordan Ngoe, Duffy Boy, what are your thoughts? And, of course, to touch on some other midfielders as well.
Yeah, like I touched on before, obviously DeGoey's been in good form. He's obviously had his issues off field, and this year he's, been focused on footy, which is, been okay to see, but I can't give him too much positive. I hate this club with a passion. I think, their midfield, obviously they have 1,000 blokes running through there. It's unbelievable how they work out. That's why I really respect Craig McRae as a coach. Whatever he feels in a certain part of the game, he might chuck in, a Maynard, he might chuck in a Crisp through there. Obviously they got side bottoms and all those types of players, Pendlebury's, Dacos's. There's some really, really good players out there, but, you look at those players and you go, we can do the exact same thing and we can chuck in multiple players through there. You got Cripps, Chera, Hewitt, you got Fogarty, Cunningham, and you got wingers in there. And you look at Ollie Hollands on the weekend, he actually had a few centre-bounce attendances, which is good to see. I think he'll become more of a midfielder when he gets a bit of size to him, I think, over the next few years. But you got a lot of guys who can run through there and do a job. Doherty as well. So both teams have, plenty of assets that they can chuck in there. Obviously, they're the benchmark in the competition. There's no doubt about that as a whole. but I think we can, really match it to them in the midfield. And, especially that last game last year, I think we ultimately beat them in the midfield. I think it was just unfortunate that we couldn't, piece 4 quarters together, which ultimately cost our season. But, I think it's time for a bit of redemption, Pato, and really get back at this side.
Yeah, well, I mean, once again, I think it's well said, just because the midfield is so important. This is something that it was our bread and butter last year, dominating the midfield. And this year we've found, I guess, other assets to kind of score and to win games. But once again, you have to rely once again on the midfield. And of course, you have a few outs. You have Kennedy and Walsh, who 100% won't play this week. But of course, maybe also Adam Chera might also be an out this week. So now you're kind of relying on your midfield depth. And that's when a Paddy Dow has to step up. That's when a George Hewitt, who's finally gotten his chance again with the injuries, it's time for him to step up and actually try and keep his spot in the side. But there's also other names in there that you kind of need to rely on you now. Because, I mean, as you said, like Cunners is a guy that could transition through there. But now Sam Doherty has always been a backline, has always been a defender in our eyes. But now he's getting the chance as a midfielder. You need to step up as well. Because last year against Collingwood, it was the exact same story. Like, we had a lot of outs. We had Walsh, Kennedy, Hewitt all out. And we were relying on guys like Will Setterfield, who, of course, are now at Essendon, but also Sam Doherty for the midfield as well. You need to rely on these guys that you don't really usually see them at their centre-backs attendances. But now you've have gotten this opportunity, you need to, I guess, execute with the skill. But I think just to really just touch on De Goey, I think it's a big thing. And with Ed Kerno maybe playing, do you think we might go straight to Nick Dacos, or do we also have to give some attention also to Jordan De Goey?
Yeah, it's tough, because I think that was the hard mix that Port Adelaide found. I think 3 quarters they tagged Dacos and then they switched Willem Drew onto De Goey, and that really didn't work. Obviously, it took De Goey out of the game, who I thought was actually a little bit underdone on Saturday night. I thought he was not moving as well as he has been. I've read a few Collingwood things, and he wasn't 100%. So it was a bit of an odd move to do that. For me, I think Dacos, I think whenever he has the ball ahead, if he has the ball ahead of the, in their kind of forward 50 area, forward 60, there's a lot of times they're ending up in goals. So I think his impact is enormous, whether he has 20 touches or 35 touches. I think his impact is enormous. So if Ed is playing, I think he has to go straight to Dacos for mine.
Yeah, well said, Daffy Boy. So now we'll of course, move on to the ruck contest, which is, of course, if we see Mark Pittonet come back this week, which will be a vital inclusion, especially up against Darcy Cameron and also Mason Cox. But we'll put the matchup as Pittonet v Cameron, which we kind of expect to be the main ruck contest. But Daffy Boy, Cameron's having a great year, but also Cox is that second ruck who's really having that chance to kind of play as a second ruck, but also as a half forward and half ruck. How do you see this contest playing out?
Yeah, it's going to be, crucial. I think both Cameron and Cox are really, really good ruckmen, but also can play ahead of the ball in that forward 50 for Collingwood, and can be an asset due to their kind of lack of, superstar forward or key forward. I was actually thinking about it the other day that imagine if Collingwood had ended up getting Tom Lynch that year, or they had him, they'd be unstoppable. Yep. I think that's their one negative, actually. Yep. I think it's their one negative. But we'll go back to the ruck in terms of, I think Pitto and TDK can really get the job done against these two. Obviously we're really confident in our list and what they can do, but it's going to be a tough challenge, because I know obviously Cameron's ability to get around the ground is important. I think him and TDK, I guess, can be very similar in terms of that kind of modern day ruckman, really good skill and ability to run around the ground, and compared to a Pitto, and I feel like Cox as well. I think Cox will move around, but I think Pitto and Cox are probably more similar in terms of size wise and stuff like that. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Pitto goes for mine, because I think obviously he's missed, I don't know how many weeks now. Is it 4 weeks or 4? Yeah, I think he missed the free. He didn't play against Hawthorn, so it's probably almost 4 weeks, 5 weeks. So I guess we're throwing him into the Wolves as a sense, but in front of 85,000. But I think Pitto can get the job done, and obviously we back him in terms of we've given him the contract for 4 years. So hopefully he can repay that faith and run straight through Mason Cox at the first bounce.
I'm saying this right now to all the viewers out there. Duffy Boy is absolutely in love with Mason Cox and how he plays his football. So, well, now I've got. I mean, well said, Duffy Boy, of course. But now we'll now move on to, of course, our forward line, which is probably the most mouth-watering, I guess, matchup of the day, which is, of course, Charlie Curnow, who's in fantastic form, coming off a 10-goal performance. I know it was against West Coast. Actually, before we move on to anything, this year, Charlie Curnow has kicked 19 goals against West Coast. Just put that through your mind right now. So, he's kicked 19 goals against one team, and of course, they played him twice. But of course, Charlie Curnow is coming up against the captain, one of the greatest captains I've ever seen from a Collingwood point of view. He's fantastic, which is, of course, Darcy Moore. He's having a great season. And, of course, you don't want to credit the captains too much, and, of course, the players too much. But I reckon one player that I would choose to play for our club, it would probably have to be Darcy Moore. I love the way he goes about it. But, of course, this week, Charlie Curnow, we want you to absolutely dominate Darcy Moore and change my mind about Darcy Moore as a footballer. But, Daffy Boy, key matchup, Charlie Curnow v. Moore, but of course, some other forwards down there up against their very structured back line. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously it's I always have this sour taste in my mouth when I talk about this club, and I think that's kind of that rivalry we have with this team. It's hard to really talk positively, but obviously they have some really good players. Obviously, the top of the ladder, and you got to respect that. You respect that. You don't respect. We don't really give a fuck about their club, but in terms of playing and coaching, they're really well coached, and they're just so confident. And the way Darcy Moore, like you said, I think the way he plays, he really sets the tone down there when he has ball in hand. I think when he takes that quick kick out, when he takes a mark, he's off. He's not waiting. He's not slowing it down and kicking it down the line. He's taking on a kick, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. But they know when it does work, it opens up the game for them more times than not. So, yeah, I find Moore a very interesting defender. Obviously, he's a good defender. But for mine, you look at the other end of the ground. For my thinking, you look at the other end of the ground and you look at Jacob Wiedering, and I think they're so different. But for me, obviously, because we've got the guy in our team, obviously I'd rather have him. But in terms of defending one-on-one, I think Wiedering's by far better than him, because I think Moore's that kind of, he doesn't really pick anyone up, does he? No. He doesn't pick anyone up because he just flies to the ball. But that's the way he plays. This is not having a go at him.
Yeah.
But when he's forced to have one-on-one, which we are creating these last 5 weeks. Remember that game last time? They laughed at us because we kept kicking to him.
Yeah.
We had no one-on-ones because we were just bombing down the line. That is his bread and butter. That is his bread and butter, because he can see the ball, he can fly at it. There's no risk.
Yeah.
You've got Charlie Curnow one-on-one, or other forwards one-on-one, and getting little short 15-metre passes, inboard kicks. That's when you start to test this Collingwood defence, because they can't just fly the ball, whether it's Jeremy Howe, who's known for his, flying at the ball as well. You've got to really test them in that way. And I think we've just got to hit up low targets, lower the eyes, like we've been doing. And that's why we've been scoring, 100 plus every week, whether it's Port Adelaide, Hawthorn, West Coast, whoever. We've found ways to score, and it hasn't just been Charlie. Obviously, last week it was pretty much just Charlie with 10 goals. But the weeks beforehand, he was getting marks at the 50 and then lowering his eyes to Lockie Fogarty or whoever.
Yeah,
I think we've got other avenues to goal now, and that's what Collingwood are going to be worried about. If we can get going, and lower the eyes and find options, they can't just go over the back and take marks, and it can really test more and stretch their defence, who I think can be stretched in terms of height. If you get TDK down there, who's going to play on him?
No,
like Jeremy Howe, or maybe you put more on him. I don't know. Maybe you switch. That's the thing. You can really stretch them out, and then you got other forwards in there. It's a shame that hopefully Jack Martin gets up, because that'll really stretch him as well. And it's tough because we've got so many injuries, man. It's just, we've got to find another way for guys to kick goals, and whether it's Honey down there, or we can still find guys to kick goals. They don't have to have super games, but if they find themselves in the right spot, we can really, use that to our advantage.
Actually, well said about, I guess the whole, I guess insight from your end about how you kind of view Darcy Moore and how effective he is, but also the difference between Wiedering, because that's why I think I would love to have Darcy Moore in the back line, because you've got to
work well together.
How well would they work together?
Yeah.
Oh, it's actually mouth-watering to actually think about. But of course, I don't think Darcy Moore would ever leave the Carlton Football Club. But I think it's Collingwood Football Club, I think. I don't know if I say Collingwood or Carlton. I think I said Carlton. But I don't think he will ever leave the Collingwood Football Club. And I think he's such an asset. But as you said, I think Jack Martin is so important if he plays this week. He's so important. Because now he's almost playing. I mean, take TDK out of the forward line. He's playing as that second tall. So we have guys like Motlop, Martin, Fogg, Hunters. You've got sort of fleas around the ball that really disturb the Collingwood backline. And I reckon that's one thing that they, like the past probably year and a half, they haven't played us like they have like we are playing now. Like we have small forwards that usually they kind of dominate in their side, but now they're playing against us pretty much with the same sort of lineup from their end. So they pretty much know what to expect, but they haven't actually versed it yet. And that's the thing. So this is why it's going to be a big test. Maybe it might go the complete opposite because they're so used to it. They might go the complete opposite way of they're so used to it now because it's in their own side that it might not work as well. But I think it's a big thing for us as supporters to watch this and also to see Charlie as that sole forward, but also Tom DeConning as that forward down there. It's so important. And if he can play a good game as a forward, this might, it's just really, it's really hard to see how it's going to go because we all know that Tom DeConning doesn't want to play as a key forward. We all know that. But it's just, So I think overall, very exciting to see how the forward line's going to go. But also the unpredictability of Jack Martin down there kind of being that second key forward is pretty exciting for me to kind of look at as a forward line sense. But to touch on our last segment, of course, which is the match predictions, Dappy Boy, I need your best on ground, your point of difference, your winner plus margin.
Yep, it's always an interesting, moment in each video we do in the preview. Important period of the episode in a sense. So I'd imagine if people can't watch the whole episode, they just skip to whatever us Nuffy say at the end. And somehow find a way for Carlton to win. But best on ground for mine, it's going to be the guy who's just come back, and I think it's going to be Paddy Cripps. I think he, obviously dominated against them last year in that last game, but I think there's something about him that he's a lot different to their midfielders. I think they've got a lot of guys running through there, but they've got a lot of guys who are inside and out. I feel for mine, he's almost that purely inside mid the last kind of month or so and back to his brutal best. So I think Paddy Cripps is going to be best on ground for mine. Point of difference. It's a tough one. Every week we talk, what is the point? Who is going to be the point of difference? Who is going to be the point of difference? And I'm going to say this guy, he's not talked about by anyone at any other club. He's not talked about anyone at any other club. We know what he can do. I think he can be a genuine A-grader if he stays on the park for the rest of the year. He's been playing good the last month since he's come in, and I think David Cunningham can be the X factor on the weekend. I feel like he's one of those guys where there's 4 minutes to go on the clock or 3 minutes to go on the clock, and he's running around and cutting angles in the forward line. And when he gets the ball, he'll pop it through, whether it's drop, punt, snap, torpedo, or over his head. He'll somehow kick it because he's that classy guy. And then he'll go to the bench, act like he didn't just kick the goal a year. That's the way he plays. I think that's just the way he goes about. He's pretty humble, I think, and keeps it low key, which I like to see. So I think he'll be the point of difference. And for me, if you're a Collingwood fan previewing this game, there's no fucking way they will be talking about David Cunningham, which is a great thing, which is a fantastic thing. And he's just going under the radar. And we love it at Carlton when we go under the radar. We're still a little bit under the radar until we beat Collingwood this weekend. When we beat Collingwood this weekend, we will be back in town. But winner and margin. I said it's almost come true. My whole prediction in terms of the mid-season buy. I copped a bit of flack, and I'll tell you right now, if you're watching this video and you're one of those commenters, you're gonna be a bit nervous, I think, because the Daffy train is going to hit in the review if we do win this game. I'll tell you right now. There was like 20, 30 comments on that saying, look at this guy, he's a nuffy. I said after the Gold Coast game, we were going to win the next 4 or 5. I said maybe the Port was going to be a loss. I said we're going to beat Collingwood. And this is the week where all that could be vindicated. Hopefully this doesn't bite me in the ass. Otherwise, this might make it on some TikTok fails page. But winner plus margin, Carlton by 16 points at the MCG on Friday night.
I mean, we love it how excited we get, and then of course we do the review episode where we lose by 26 points. We look back at this and we're just like, why do we tip Carlton? We're just about over it. But I do like your predictions, as I said, especially the point of difference. So of course I'm going to I'll touch on my point of difference first. And it's one man that as soon as I saw, because I was writing my predictions down, of course, while you were speaking about yours, and I think point of difference for mine, one guy comes to mind, and that's Ollie Hollands. He is that guy he's that blue, he's that navy blue that, of course, he grew up as a supporter. He knows how much that he would hate this club. And he's that point of difference that last year, even when he was lacing out guys with his left foot, he was lacing out with his left peg, and I'm like, is this guy a left footer? Is this guy a left footer or a right footer? But Ollie Hollands, I think he is due to play a big game, because we were kind of speaking about Ollie Hollands about if he's going to come straight back into the side. And of course, due to injuries, he came back into the side last week. And I think this week he's the point of difference, and he could be that genuine winger, because it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Akers, Hollands and Cottrell if they're all going to play. Because Cottrell has been quite good this season because he's had that wing role. But now with Hollands back and playing the way that he did last week against West Coast, I know it's against West Coast, but you still have to do it on the AFL stage, and he did it. So I think he's a point of difference. Best on ground, you mention him, David Cunningham. Yeah, David Cunningham is going to be the best on ground, and I'm going to tell you why. When he gets the midfield, I guess, role as a mid forward. I mean, I think right now he's playing more as a forward, but now that there's a few injuries, Cunningham's going to go into that midfield, and we know when Cunningham's going into that midfield, he dominates. He dominates, and he does it usually against Essendon, and he obviously does it in big games against a rivalry like that. And now we're coming up against another rivalry game in Collingwood, MCG, Friday Night Lights. And it's time for David Cunningham to step up. He's had a few games under his belt at AFL level. It's time for Cunners this week to just dominate. And I'm so excited to see him play. He's kind of like, I mean, we always speak about him being the Rolls-Royce sort of player, but I think he's also the guy that brings people to watch the game. Like he's a bit of that. I mean, I don't think he's there just yet, but I think he's that player that if he can keep this form up, he is that type of player. So credit to David Cunningham. I'm so glad that he's back on the field, and hopefully he can stay on the park for the rest of his career. But of course, winner plus margin. I'm gonna have the small break. Winner plus margin. Carlton by 9 points. Carlton by 9 points. So of course we both tipped Carlton against the top ladder. We would be the only supporters in the world that would do this. But we don't care, because we are such Carlton nuffies that we could just somehow see Charlie Kerner kick 9 against Darcy Moore. But I think it's this week. If we win this week, we say it every week, but if we win this week, this is the one. This is the one. I think it's pretty much with that. It's a big game. It's a massive game. And even if we have a lot of outs, we're going to go in unpredictable. And that's something that not a lot of the top sides like. They want to see the predictability so they can kind of prepare for that. But now we're kind of going in as unpredictable. It must be a scary sight from them. And they're going to be worried. Because now
they will be.
now that we've got some form, we are well and truly a chance for this. We won't be favourites. We'll be far from it, but we're a chance to win this game. Big chance to win this game. But of course, that's the last segment of the episode. But Daffy Boy, before we wrap up the episode and I guess look forward to the game on Friday night, is there anything else you want to touch on?
No, just, get there in numbers. Obviously, it's going to be big games, so soak it all in because, we haven't had many, I guess, this time of the season. Obviously, last year we were playing for something, but most years we weren't playing for anything at this time of the year. So just obviously don't take it for granted. Obviously, we're ninth, but we're playing for something at round 20 here. We're playing for something in round 20. We've had a lot of dead rubbers over the years where round 20 against, someone doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Those games don't matter at all, more for pride. But now we're playing for something, and I think just have a good crack. I want to see a good performance against the top side. And if we can beat Collingwood, then I'm starting to believe. I'll start to believe. That's when the belief will start to come in, when you can beat a team that good. Yeah. At a ground they're really good at, obviously. Well, they don't lose at any ground, to be fair. Yeah. Especially the G, they are that end of the ground where they all go off is the worst thing ever. But it is a cool sight. That's what footy's all about. We're two of the biggest clubs in the land, and no one can tell us otherwise. Obviously, but both of our clubs are keeping this fucking league up and about because, with both of our, even when we're down the dumps, we'll both shit, 2017, 2016, we still get numbers to games, we still rock up, and that's the respect I have for them. We hate them to pieces, but without this rivalry, I don't think this sport would be where it is today.
Yep, well, spot on. So when you said then about the believe, are you talking about finals as in making the 8, or are you talking about believe as a little bit more than that?
Yeah, I'm talking about impact in finals, but I'll keep it there.
Yep, nice. I like it. I love this. love it. Just going to keep it there and just wait until we make the grand final and we pretty much play against in the grand final. But of course, well said. I think it's Are you going this Friday?
I will be there, Pato. I'll be there, loud and proud.
Good. Love to see it. But it's predicted. I know that it's going to be a sellout, but it's kind of hard to tell if it's going to be 80,000, 90,000, 90,000. Yeah, I'm hearing 90 as well. So massive game, Friday Night Lights. It's so exciting because, as you said, round 20, there's something on the line now. It's a little bit more than the rivalry. It's now something's on the line once again. And exact same thing as last year with round 23. Something was on the line. It brings redemption. Yep, but it brings the crowd into the into the seats, and it's so exciting. But well said, Duff. And of course, that is the last segment of the episode. That's the last thing we'll talk about. But of course, to all the viewers out there, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Make sure to try and share their channel around as much as you possibly can. And of course, on all the podcast platforms, make sure to try and share their channel around. I know that we've been doing this podcast since midway 2021. Unbelievable how quickly time goes past. But yeah, of course, we are enjoying it as much as you guys are viewing it as well. So, make sure to like and subscribe on all the platforms that we're on, also socials as well. But to you, Daffy Boy, and to all the blue baggers out there, up the baggers!
Come on.